This is a Mac Tools ET2020 ET2020 Quick Scope Plus made by Tektronix. So it's actually a Tektronix portable scope, and it's focused around automotive testing, sensors, spark, waveforms, and it's also just a regular, typical auto ranging, true RMS, multimeter, voltmeter, scope. And I have fixed 3 or 4 of these for local shops and technicians' friends. They all have the same problem. It's a chronic problem, and if you get one of these, you do not want to power it up until you address the problem, because if you do, you'll damage 2 fairly expensive integrated circuits. Now, the way you get this open to repair it is you remove the 4 rubber corners, and then there's 4 Torx bolts hidden in here. The problem that every one of these scopes has is that these 4 electrolytic capacitors leak, and they leak an electrolyte solution that spreads out over the board and gets underneath all these parts, and it's conductive. So even if you just replace these, which they say 150 at 16 volts on them, that's the value, 150 microfarad, 16 volts. Even if you replace these and don't thoroughly clean the board, and including make the effort to get all of this juice out from under all of these parts, it will damage the 2 regulator ICs, which are, you can see right there, it says 1174, and you can buy these off DigiKey, these little 1174 switching regulators, but they're around $20 each. So if you power this up without replacing these and cleaning this, it will wipe out those 2 ICs, and they're difficult to change. And you can see the electrolyte film on this one. It may be difficult to see in the camera, but you can see the electrolyte film, the wet there, and it's worked its way up underneath these. And these are kind of corroded here. The corrosion is from the electrolyte. So you have to replace this, and this, and thoroughly clean this. You want to remove these, clean it, then put the new ones on. And kind of the easiest way that I've found to remove these is just to, don't try and desolder them, just work them up off the board. See the leakage there? They are polarity sensitive. The black line does represent the negative. You can see that's positive, positive, negative, negative. So you do have to get them back in right. These early surface mount electrolytics are very problematic and due to leaking. Yeah, don't even try and desolder them, because if you heat them up, you're just going to cause them to squirt all over the board. Look at that. So all of this area has to be cleaned. What I found does this the best is actually just carburetor cleaner and a acid brush. And you really have to spray the cleaner forcefully underneath these chips so that it runs under and through and out. And like I say, if you power this up before you repair this, you're gonna fry these. You're gonna wipe them out, and they're 20 bucks each. The ET2020, I fixed about 4 of these successfully. They're quite difficult to fix. The video is gonna make it look a lot easier than it actually is. but they're old. They're from 1995, but they're actually a really handy, neat multimeter scope to have. You want to start with a brake cleaner soaked paper towel or Q-tip, and you want to just start by cleaning this area off right here. You want to try and minimize spreading the juice around. And the brake cleaner will melt and discolor the black plastic case, so you want to get the board out and away from it when you actually clean it. But you can see the corrosion that's occurred there from the leakage. Most of the time, a little bit of this juice won't actually stop the item from functioning or damage it, but with this particular unit, it does every single time. Don't even think about just popping the batteries in and trying it without doing this first. So I'm going to work on this. Once you've cleaned the majority of that off, then you can take your iron and remove the, kind of clean these up. And it smells like fish when you heat it up. That's the juice out of the capacitors. I need two hands to do this because I need to feed some new solder onto it to get it to break through the corrosion. You can see how it's still wet around this regulator chip. So what you want to do is you want to just get this a little wet with carburetor brake cleaner. Just a little bit. You want to do this in stages. We're gonna do it gently, and then at some point we're gonna just take it and we're gonna just hose it down and like pressure wash it. And then take your acid brush and just work it in, and then take a paper towel and blot it up. And then we'll just blot it up. And we're going to just keep doing this until we get as much of it out off of the board and out from under. The main thing is to get it out from under. There is a gap underneath these parts. As microscopic as it is, there is a gap under here, and that juice gets underneath and you have to get it out. Even underneath this chip here, you have to get the juice out. You have to get, and that stuff is like an oil, it just spreads all over the place. I've lifted the board up and I put a plastic bag under it. And I've also covered this side with a plastic bag, and this is best done with two hands. But what I'm going to do is drop it on the floor and break it. Let's try that again. I'm going to get right up here and I'm going to pressure wash underneath these. You got to get all that stuff out from under these parts. It's been thoroughly cleaned. I went over it and used almost an entire can of brake cleaner. I'm going to let it sit and dry in the sun for a while and bake all the possible moisture out from under these chips, because the brake cleaner is cold, it attracts condensation. So we want to make sure everything is dry. So we're going to let it bake in the sun for a while. I decided to take the battery pack out, and unfortunately it looks like somebody tried to put new batteries in this to test it. And so that means there's probably a good chance that one of the two of those regulator 1174 chips has been damaged. I was really hoping to not see this. So I'm installing the new electrolytic capacitors, and these are, I think, 150 at 25 or 50 volts. They just have to be above 16 volts. The regulated voltage, this is the power supply section right here that we're working on, and the regulated voltage is something like plus and minus 4.2 or 4.6, and we'll see that when we get this working. Just temporarily for testing purposes, I've tacked on a few just through-hole caps so I can measure the voltage. And yes, unfortunately, one of the two chips is damaged. So if I measure the voltage across this capacitor, when I push the power button, I get 4.9 volts. If I measure the voltage across this capacitor, when I push the power button, I only get 0.2 volts. So unfortunately, that 1174 has been damaged. Now, if they had not tried to power it up before the cleaning, then the chips would have survived. But what happened is they put the batteries in and they tried to power it up with all that conductive electrolyte, and it damaged the regulator IC. So I'll have to get one of these ordered, and I'm going to order some more filter capacitors. I'm not going to give a surface mount soldering tutorial in this video, but I will clarify and show a couple things I'm using. This is the cleaner I'm using. I know I keep saying carburetor cleaner. I'm using this non-chlorinated 50 state brake parts cleaner. I'm using flux. I'm using 6040 lead-based solder. I'm just using a 25 watt very fine tip soldering iron. I can't find my other soldering iron I usually use for this. The chip is out, the LT1174. I have ordered it, and the pads are all cleaned up and ready for the new part to be installed. So as soon as it gets here, we'll pop it in, and I hope this scope works. This might be the most important thing. This is one of those little jeweler's hobby magnifying headsets with that little loop. I think it's like 13 times or something like that. Anyway, you can pick these up for $8 or so. But yeah, having good magnification is let's see, is critical. So the magnification makes this little tiny stuff look like big enough to work on. The parts finally came in, and I actually screwed up the first time through and ordered the wrong ICs, which was an expensive mistake. This is the correct number right here. LTC 1174HV. The ones I mistakenly ordered were the same number except they're -5. And these are a 5 volt, fixed 5 volts, where these are adjustable. This uses adjustable. So these right here, this number is the right number for this Tektronix scope. So that was a waste of money. I'm going to go ahead and install it. I also ordered some more capacitors. I got some different types. They're all 150 microfarad above. Basically, this is a 4.5 volt circuit, so 10 volts on up is good. And I got some, I'm going to try some aluminum poly. These are supposed to last a lot longer and not leak. So let me go ahead and get this installed. And you do have to get these in right. You can see that the right side, the right edge, has got a slope where the left side doesn't. So pin 1 is on the sloped side. Okay, there's our new chip installed. 1174H. Let's power it up and measure the voltage on this cap and see if we're getting the appropriate positive and negative voltage. And if it's working, we can replace our two other surface mount caps and button this thing up. Okay, the battery's in place. Let's give it a try. 4.88 volts on that capacitor, and on this one 4.91. Let's see if we have anything on our display, and there it is. It is working. They make a couple different versions. Of course, the version 2 is oh, the battery just fell out. Alright, well, I'm going to go ahead and put the appropriate caps in here, and then should be able to button this up and have a working Mac ET2020 scope. Okay, we're all buttoned up here. You can see the arrow points at pin 1. And the capacitors I got weren't quite the same profile. They were a little bit taller than the last ones. And these were 150 at 16 volt. I think the original was 16 volt, and I kept saying they were 35, and I was mistaken. As you can see, there's only 4.8 volts across these capacitors, so it's not real critical. So we're ready to button it back up and see how it works. Measuring this 9 volt battery on the Fluke, 9.34 volts. On the ET2020, 9.36 volts. And this does minimum, maximum, all of that stuff. And the scope portion appears to be working too. So if I just measure the hum coming out of my finger, it's working good. It's a very nice little scope. And here it has a menu where it'll kind of do all your you know, your different sensors. How do I get back here? Sensors, let's see, select. So yeah, it's a very neat little scope. Very handy when working on automotive stuff. Alright, well, we got another one here to fix. This one actually came in while I was waiting for the parts from DigiKey on the last one, since I screwed up the order the first time. Mac Tools ET2020 Quick Scope Plus True RMS Multimeter Auto Ranging Scope. And this one has the NiCad rechargeable battery, which I doubt is any good, which might have actually saved the chips in this one. But while I pull this apart and we fix it, diagnose it, I'm going to pop this on the little computerized charger I have. Okay, we'll just try 200 milliamps. So it's open. Okay, well, it looks like this is just completely bad. So no surprise there with a NiCad battery that's from 95. It's just totally bad. Well, this is interesting. This one actually looks like it has not leaked. And they're the same capacitors. This is one of the capacitors out of the previous unit. Same exact. But this looks clean, and this will be either the 4th or 5th one of these meters that I've repaired, and they were all due to bad caps. And like I said, don't power it up until you verify. But let's yank one of these. So here we go. Like I said, I don't know if the thing works or not. Oh yeah. just starting to leak. Maybe we got lucky on this one. Maybe I don't have to wash the whole thing off with carb cleaner or brake cleaner, I'm sorry. Maybe we got lucky with this one. We'll just recap it and see if it works, which is yeah, maybe we got lucky here. Yeah, definitely look at the oil. This is not some type of glue. This is actual liquid oil. And this is what destroys this. This leaks out of these capacitors. You can see the bottom of this one. It's real hard to see in the camera, but it's definitely liquidy oil. So maybe I got lucky here. It doesn't look like the oil spread much. Maybe we just clean it up and recap it. I cleaned the board off before I'm going to desolder the pins, because as soon as you apply heat to any of this, that oil is going to just spread all over the place. That's why I said don't use a soldering iron to remove the cap. Gently pull them off the board, because once you heat them, they squirt. I'm going to be replacing these with, and I know I've made a lot of mistakes at the voltage, but these originals were 150 at 10 volts. On this scope, I'm going to be using these, which are these are poly. These are not your typical electrolytic. These are supposed to have a much higher lifespan, longer lifespan. These are Nichicon. Unfortunately, they're made in China. But there you go. These are aluminum poly. These are what they're using in the more expensive motherboards now. They're not supposed to swell up and pop. I wonder if they leak after 25, 30 years. Here are our pads all cleaned up and ready for the new capacitors. And I don't know if I explained what this circuit does, but there's these two 1174 buck boost regulator chips that create the positive and negative power rails for all of the chips here. And it's about 4.8 something volts, 4.86 volts, positive and negative. And the main power supply batteries are 9 volts. Okay, since I don't have a battery, we have about 9.5 volts applied. Let's see if we got lucky. We got our caps in. Let's see if we got lucky here. And unfortunately, bummer. Man, this one looks so good. What's up? You can actually hear a high-pitched squeal coming from this. And on this one, we have the same thing as the last one. We have about 4.7 volts here and 0.2 volts here, so it's got to be this chip again is bad. Okay, the new chip has been installed. I've actually got to the point where I can replace these surface mount jobbies faster with a regular soldering iron than I can a through hole. So let's see. Power's applied with any luck. There we go. We are happy. It's old and slow, but it works. Cool. There's two fixed. Exact same problem with both of them. bad leaky capacitors and bad 1174 regulator chip. And again, this is the correct number right here. So I hope this helps you fix your quickscope, your Mac Tektronix ET2020 quickscope. Talk about corroded. 9533 is the date code. These are NiCads out of an old cordless phone. These are brand new old stock. I've been told that NiCads don't go bad until you initially charge them, then they start aging. I don't know if that's true. Let's see if we can make this fit in here. That seemed to go together pretty easy. Now we'll charge it. Alright, let's see what happens with the new batteries. Now this thing will automatically shut off when the battery's charged. I'm charging it at 200 milliamps. It's a 700 milliamp battery, so say 5 hours, which is hitting a NiCad pretty hard, but should be okay. Okay, it looks like our batteries took 1.337 amps to fully charge them up. Like I said, this thing automatically cuts off. It knows they're full by the cycle. It turns the voltage off and looks at the drop. So they took a good charge. There we go, another fixed, working, repaired Mac Tools quickscope Tektronix with NiCad rechargeable battery pack rebuilt too.